Hey guys, what's up? Eddie Aho here with KissAnalog.com. Today I have an oscilloscope I want to show you. I want to introduce this scope. It's a Uni-T oscilloscope and I'm pretty impressed with this thing. One thing I want to do is I want to compare it to the new 12-bit scope that's made a big splash, right? The Rigo, okay? And it's like the 0800. Like I think they've got a couple different models, right? So I'm going to kind of talk about that and show you some comparison in numbers, okay? Now this is an 8-bit scope, your classic 8-bit scope, but we're going to compare some of the other features because the 12-bit, everybody gets excited about that. I get excited about that. I've been talking about higher bit scopes on this channel for some time now, and I've done some videos like 8-bit bytes. I don't know. I've done a few videos talking about that. And I've got these pico scopes, which high bit count scopes. These guys are awesome. But at this price range, I'm going to show you why this thing is worth considering. Okay. Now, this is kind of a box opening. I did a 1-minute video showing the box. Okay. There's the box. And it was really a box within a box. Okay. So the Uni-T stuff is all shipped very well. It comes with these dense foam things. This is some kind of poly foam, but really dense foam. So they're very well protected in the double box. So you get the 4 probes. That's very nice. And we're actually going to look at the probes in another video, okay? Because in this video, I just want to talk about why this scope is worth looking at. And then I'm going to do a full review on it, okay? But it comes with the USB cable as well, and certificate of calibration, and this little guide here, you open it up and it kind of tells you where to download your manuals and everything. Yeah, saving trees. We like that because what happens after you start using your manual, it just gets stored somewhere or you toss it, right? So, and then precautions or safety books. So I think they still have to send these out because safety's #1. And the scope's wrapped in a plastic bag and then in these foam protectors. Okay, so what you get is this little guy. Alright, so check it out. Let me show you this scope. You got these knobs. They're all pushable, okay, so you can center the waveforms or whatever they do, whatever function they serve. They're nice large knobs, rubberized, so they have a nice texture to them. If you can see what I'm talking about there. Yeah, they just have a nice feel to them. Also, the handle is rubberized on top, so it's a nice handle. You can see the depth of this thing, just, I don't know, 3 or 4 inches. But yeah, so there you go. Now the bottom. So you got these feet that snap in place really well. So they got a nice strong snap. But look at the size of these rubber feet they have on them. And the rubber cushion here. And it's grooved, so it really grips on your bench. And then see how that snaps in place? And then that's a nice solid rubber piece. So really nice. I just like that. But now, okay, let's look at the back of the scope. So the back, if you look inside, maybe you can tell there's kind of a metal screen in there with little holes. And the reason those holes are sized the way they are is for the EMI or the RFI, so only very small high frequency signals could ever escape. So that's why it's designed that way. But yeah, this is also removable. So if you're in a dusty lab or over time, you want to take this off and clean it without having to disassemble the whole scope, you can do that. So really a lot of thought, attention to detail has been put in this. You got your LAN connection, your USB connection on this side, and you got your external trigger and your auxiliary connection on this side. Okay, so now, yeah, so nice setup, right? Okay, on the front, you got your soft power button, but if you notice back here, you have a hard switch. So a mechanical switch to take it off the mains power. So one thing that it does is it doesn't just put this in sleep mode like the soft button does. It actually takes it offline, so you're not putting hours on your electronics, right? Now you have the soft button too, so if you're using it often, you can turn on the hard button and just use the soft button up here for power on. So that's a nice feature. And your USB power, your compensation ports there, your 4 channels, and you got a really nice layout. It's really intuitive and just a nice layout, I think. Okay, so there you go. All right, guys, here's the thing. Some of you guys are familiar with siglets, right? Now, the siglet, this is the older 1202 X, not the X-E, which is the newer ones. I actually like this X better. I think the GUI on the -E's wasn't quite as nice. Also, this has the 8-inch screen. Okay, so size does matter. Now, with this new scope, we have the 7-inch screen. Okay, so with the 7-inch screen, smaller. But it's not just the size of the screen, it's how you use it. Okay, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but it's the space in that screen. So we're going to power this up. But you know what? Before I show you that, I want to show you this one more time. So on the Signet, you see the buttons across the bottom of the screen, and on the Uni-T, you see them running up on the side. Well, there's one that's called the menu button, and you click on that and it gets rid of the menu. So I'm going to show you that as we power it up. Now, the layout of both these scopes is very nice. Okay, can't complain about the Signet layout at all. Now, this button up here, or this knob right here, the universal knob or whatever they call it, it's the same kind of knob that the Uni-T has. Okay, kind of multi-purpose knob is what Uni-T calls it. But this Uni-T, if you've ever used a Signet, you know how kind of sensitive it is, and sometimes it's frustrating trying to rotate it to the right thing because it zips through the menus and that. This one's very nice, very smooth, works awesome. Okay, all right, guys, so let's power this on. Nice scope, right? I mean, oh, you know what? Let me just comment on the feel. When you pick this thing up, it just feels like a nice quality instrument, if you know what I mean. I mean, just some of the attention to detail, like these bumps back here. Let me show you a close-up of those. So these little bumps back here, if you set this on its back, it keeps this off of the bottom. So, or maybe you're pushing it up against something. Maybe that's what it's for. So you can only push it so close, and it's going to keep a space from this little bump right here to this surface. So you can't, you know, block your fan. So maybe that's what that's for, right? Pushing your scope against something. So that would make sense. So anyway, just it feels nice. Now, one thing we're gonna have to do is peel the sticker off. But here, let's go ahead and power it up. All right, so I just ran this cable across here so I can stick it in here and power the scene on. Okay, I turn off the mechanical switch. Okay, so let's take a look at this nice and close, okay? Okay, here we go. I'm gonna hit the mechanical switch, and it turns on a red glowing light there, if you can see. Then you push it in, it turns green, and it powers up. Okay, now it kind of goes through this Christmas tree thing, if you could see that. Maybe my lights are too bright in here, but it goes through this thing, a self-check, and it turns on all these LEDs. It's kind of interesting to watch that. One thing I've noticed is with this little thing over the screen, it adds, yeah, it's really non-reflective with that. So I'm going to take it off, and I don't know if it's going to be reflective with it off or not, but we're going to take this guy off because it just seems a little bit too non-shiny. Oh, it might be shiny underneath there. I'm not sure. Nope, that's good. Okay, good. So it isn't shiny. I was kind of afraid of that. I was almost going to leave it on, but yeah, that looks a little bit nicer now, right? Now here, one thing I want to show you is when you're playing with menus, when you're turning on things, you get this menu here. You get a menu bar like you do in most scopes, right? So there's your menu bar, okay? Then you just come up to this button here, and so yeah, you just turn off or on, okay? So that's awesome. You gain your whole, you know, you got so many square inches here, and you gain those inches back. Now, guys, I'm going to compare this to the Rigo scope, okay? Now, if you look at some of the reviews of the Rigo, or look at online at their website, I don't want to show pictures of theirs, which I don't want to get in trouble for doing that, but if you look at the menus, like this one has a small little strip across here and a small little strip across here. You look at their menu, and it takes up, I think, a significant part down here. The buttons are large, and the menu buttons up here are large. And what it does is these wide angle screens, it just shrinks your screen down even more, which I think is ridiculous because, I mean, what you want to do is you want to use these side menus, and then you want to make them disappear when you want to, the way Uni-T did it. So when you have a wide angle screen, you don't want a bunch of menus like Microsoft does, and that you end up with a workspace this big, and which is ironic because their scope's a 12-bit scope. So you want to use that vertical height for your 12-bit so you can really zoom in on your voltage waveform, right? You don't want to lose that in menus on top and bottom. I think that's kind of crazy. Now, I think the reason they did that is because their GUI was probably designed around their larger screen scopes, but on their smaller 7-inch screen scopes like this one, it just uses way too much space, I think. Okay, so as far as the interface, the other thing is they have that kind of tricky looking thing up here, and the Uni-T just has your normal buttons. Okay, like on theirs, I don't even see an acquire button on theirs. Maybe it's there, maybe I missed it. But I just like the button layout on this. It's more standard, more classic, and instead of having that kind of goofy looking thing. Also, their video buttons here, like the stop and the left and right. This one seems like it's up here by the multi-purpose button, which seems to make sense. They put it down in here. If you look at their vertical buttons and that, they just don't line up nice and even like this one does. I just think the GUI on this and also the mechanical controls on this just are more intuitive. They make more sense. So I think Uni-T hit it out of the park with this. I think they, Siglent looks very similar. So I think what works, works. Okay, guys, so I kind of propped it on this piece of foam. Sorry about the mess on the bench. I'm in the middle of another test, but I just wanted to get this, video kicked off so that I can show you some measurements with it on this project I'm working on, okay? So, yeah. I've got a bunch of connections back here. I just don't want to break them all up. So, all right. So, you know what? The Rigo, the new 12-bit scope. Now, the DHO814. I want to kind of compare it to that model. Now, just a little background. When I heard about these 12-bit scopes come out, I actually contacted Rigo about a scope review I wanted to do, and I was going to do is going to update my review on the top 4 scopes under $500 or $500 and below, which this one's right close there. So just, coincidentally, I'm kind of doing 2 of the better scopes right now, maybe, okay? So, but anyway, I started talking about this about a year and a half ago. I think it was in September 2022. And they let me know that they're going to have these new, what they called the HDO scopes come out. And I guess they changed it to DHO. But anyway, so I said, wow, the HDO, that sounds awesome. They said, well, okay, it's going to come out later that year in October. And then I think it got pushed off or so. I'm not sure. But then after that, no response. No, they don't answer my emails anymore. So I don't know. Maybe they don't like me. Maybe they are afraid of my reviews. Anyway, I don't know. I don't really hold back on things that cost a lot that I don't think's worth it. And I thought that their new scopes, the 12-bit scopes and the price ranges, I thought it looked really great. And I really wanted to get the 1000 series. It was around $1,100, $1,000. And I thought, hey, I'll do a video for the best scopes around $1,000, which I think I ended up doing. And I used or what was that review? And I think I used a Pico scope and something else. And I don't know. Maybe they didn't like that. So, yeah, that's where it goes, right? I think there's certain companies that we probably know on this channel that probably are never going to contact me to give me anything. Oh, by the way, they were going to give me this scope. They were going to loan it to me. But what I've noticed recently on some videos, because I always do my research before I do these videos, and I noticed that some channels like half the size of mine have gotten scopes. So I don't think it's the size of my channel. Must be my content. Anyway, so sorry I can't show you a Rigo here. And I do actually have one, an older one I'm going to show you guys. But anyway, I don't have one of their new ones. So one of our viewers sent me one. So I don't get things sent to me very often, but I did get one of those sent to me. And anyway, I'll review it. Sometimes I don't review things or show things because if I don't see the value in it, I have a hard time doing that. But I think I'm going to anyway for people that whoever bought that scope already and want to know how to use it. I think I'll show some how-to videos. I wanted to start doing some how-to videos for entry-level scopes. All right, sorry, I'm ranting, raving, and going off in different directions. So let's talk about this scope and why you might want to consider it. Okay, now it's 4 channels and it's a 200 meg scope. Okay, well, let's talk about what the DHO814 has. It's 12-bit. Now, okay, now in the 800 they go to 100 megahertz scope. Okay, so let's just say we're going to give up the we're going to compare 100 meg to 200 meg because hey, it's 12-bit versus 8-bit. Yeah, why not? I mean, I would take a 100 meg 8-bit or 12-bit scope, you know, versus a 200 8-bit. So that's not a reason to pick this one. But let's go on. So the sampling rate. This one has 2 gigasamples per second, which is pretty crazy. Okay, for a 200 meg scope, that's pretty awesome. Now the DHO has 1.25 gigasamples. Well, it's a 100 meg scope, so it's not quite half, but it's, you know, close to half, right? 1.25. Well, now the thing is you have to know that every scope operates a little differently as far as that sampling rate. For instance, with this one, so if I go to 2 channels, I get 1 gigahertz, drops in half. Now it doesn't matter if I stay in the same bank, meaning maybe one bank is channel 1 and 2 and one bank is channel 3 and 4. It doesn't matter if I go channel 1 and 2 or 1 and 3 or 1 and 4. If I go to any 2 channels, it drops down to 1 gig. So that's nice to know. Some scopes, it depends on what bank you hit, how it divides down. Okay, now in the DHO and the 814, when you go to 2 channels, you drop down to 625 megasamples. So you drop in half, same as this one. But now you're down to 625 on this one, and you're still at 1 gig on this. Okay, so if I go to 3 channels on this guy, now I'm down to 500. Okay, so if I go to 3 channels on this one, I'm down to 312. So 3 or 4 channels, you're 312. On this one, 3 or 4 channels, if I go to all 4 channels, I'm still at 500. Okay, so you almost have double the amount of samples, how many times it's sampling that signal horizontally. So you get a lot more samples with the Uni-T. Okay, that's nice. All right, so maybe that's not a big selling point. Okay, let's talk about deep memory. Now, with digital scopes, what I believe makes a difference between, let's call it entry level, meaning performance. If you only go up to, let's just say 1 meg. If you only go 1 meg deep, or 2 or 4 meg even, that's not really a lot of deep memory. Now, if you're into kbytes, you're definitely not deep. But if you're in a 1, 2, you know, to 4 meg, which some of the entry-level key sites and that's what they have, you're barely starting to touch deep memory. And scopes like the Siglant back here, it's only a 2-channel, so you have 14 megapoints. Okay, that's a lot. But if you go to 2 channels, you get 7 on each. Yeah, that's the way a lot of them work, right? Divides in 2. So I think, you know, my GW up there, 10 meg. My MIG-SIG, it even has more. Okay, so, and the Pico's ridiculous. Okay, it has crazy amount of memory. So, but you know, 10 meg per channel, that's great. So, you know, that's great up there. Well, okay, let's look at the Rigo. Okay, so you start off with 25 megapoints. That's terrific. That's great. But when you go to 2 channels, you drop down to 10 megapoints. All right, that's still great. But 3 or 4 channels, you drop down to 1 megapoints. Man, that's not so great. I don't know why it drops from 10 all the way down to 1, but 1 megapoints, I don't think that's that good. So now you're kind of not even as good as the Keysight. I mean, so the deep memory, when you have a lot of waveforms, you know, you got a lot of stuff, and then you want to zoom in here, you want to zoom back out, zoom in here. That's what that allows you to do. You freeze the waveform, and then you can zoom around, you can zoom, you know, you can get a lot of detail, right? Because you've got all these data points you've collected. Deep memory. You stored them in memory, now you're going around looking at them, okay? So, yeah, that's not real impressive to me. All right, so let's say you go up to the DHO900 series, the 924, okay? So you start off at 50 megapoints. That's really nice. And then you go to 2 channels, you drop down 25 meg. That's still awesome. And then you go to 3 or 4 channels, you got 10 meg. Okay, so now you're talking, okay? But what we did is we went from the Rigo DHO814, which is $549, we went $220 up. We went to $769. So yeah, that took a couple $100 more to do that. All right, so that's a pretty big price jump to, you know, for that extra memory, right? Well, okay, so now let's go over to this guy. So this guy has 56 megapoints compared to the 25 you started with the 814. Well, when you go to 2 channels, it doesn't divide. You still get 56 megapoints for each channel. That's amazing. that's really amazing. So instead of like where the Rigo dropped to 10 megapoints, which is still great, this one is fantastic. 56 megapoints, that's crazy. Okay, now if you go to 3 channels or 4 channels, you get 28 megapoints. That's still crazy. That's more than you started off with the Rigo, okay? So more samples, you're collecting more samples with this one, but you're also collecting a lot more data, a lot more deep memory. So the Uni-T starts looking pretty awesome, right? Okay, now here's another thing. The Rigo, there's a refresh rate, right? I call it kind of like blinking, like you capture an image, it fills up all that memory, it blinks, and then it does it again. Well, those blinks, when it's in between captures, you could possibly lose a signal. You could maybe lose something you're looking for. It might sneak by just coincidentally in between those, right? You blinked and it went by. So the speed of these things is important. Now the Rigo has some crazy speeds. Now the funny thing about this Rigo series, if you look at their more expensive 12-bit scopes, they don't call out the 1 million waveforms. This one calls out 1 million waveforms per second. So now Dave did a test where he collected some things, started turning on things, and watch how that dropped down, okay? Because they do talk about in vector mode, it drops to 30,000 waveforms per second. Okay, so 1 million to 30,000. That's a big drop. And then on record mode, it goes up to, you can start off at 500,000, but you can just, it's really hard to get information. You have to actually test it like Dave did, or you have to have one in hand to start looking at it, which I don't have, so I can't really do that. But the way they divide their sampling rate and their memory in half each time, I got to believe that's what they're doing with the refresh rate too. Every time you turn on something. Now in Dave's video, where he reviewed the DHO in depth, he was talking about that speed. He was showing that. But if you watched the 10 megahertz clock waveform he was looking at, it was nice and square when he started off. And then by the time he turned on some other channels, it had these big ringing bumps on the thing. It wasn't square anymore. So he was focusing on the capture rate, how fast it was capturing, but also it was screwing up the waveform that it did capture. It started to unsquare it. Why did it do that? Because the memory depth. If you look at it, the sample rate went from, he started off with one channel, 1.25 gigasamples, and then it dropped to 625, and it didn't look quite as square, and then it dropped down to 312. You can see from what he did how that affected that signal that he did capture. So what he was focusing on was that blink rate, like the capture rate, how fast it goes down there and captures things. He wasn't really looking at how it affected the actual signal because of the sampling. Okay, so I mean, you got to pay attention to those kind of things. Okay, so this guy, because it captures so many more samples, even when you go down to all 4 channels, you're at 500, megasamples per second. It's quite a bit higher than what you did with the Rigol, right? And so anyway, so I just want to point out those things. Now the other thing is, now I couldn't tell if his knobs are rubberized because it's hard to tell on that one, but these you can definitely tell. It's plastic, gray in the middle, and then rubberized on the outside. But the display on the Rigol, it had these huge things I talked about, so the screen was really shrunken down. I've used some Tektronix scopes that are like 20, well, the one I talk about all the time, 27 grand. We paid for that thing. Well, we leased it. But anyway, the thing is had a huge screen. I think it was 12-inch screen, but then it had all these menus on the top and bottom. So the actual usable space was like, God, it was a fraction. I mean, I kind of complained to the tech. Well, I didn't I did. I told the Tektronix guys, I'm like, hey, if I bought a car for that much money and my dashboard, my screen shrunk down so small I could barely see it, wouldn't you complain if you bought a car like that? It's like, you get this big screen, you expect to use it. You don't want it taken up by menus. So anyway, if you look at the Rigol, it looks like the screen's kind of diminished that way too. So with this guy, turn off the menus. That's awesome. So you regain your sides, and you always have your top and bottoms because there's just narrow bars on top and bottom. Okay, so your vision's bad, right? Well, you like those big bars, but you have a real small screen. So isn't the scope all about capturing a signal and seeing it on the screen? Oh yeah, it's a 12-bit scope. Well, 12 bits is vertical mode. You want to see that vertical mode, right? With 12 bits, that's the whole value of it, is increasing your resolution vertically. Well, if you only have a third of your screen left, or 2/3 of your screen left, maybe, I don't know, but you end up with a fraction of your screen left, then you don't have a lot left to look at. So you're going to end up having to use a monitor to see, which is fine. Oh, now the one thing I want to point out with the Rigol, it is touchscreen. But on a 7-inch screen, like my fingers, man, when you watch Dave, he's hitting those little boxes, and he might have smaller hands than me, but he's hitting those little boxes. And I can tell you, my Mix-Sig screen's bigger than that, and Mix-Sig puts bigger buttons, and their menus disappear. Anyway, I like the Mix-Sig touchscreen because there's actually big enough things I can hit. Even though some of them I have to get really, I have to zero in my finger and just touch it, So, I don't know. I guess if you use one of those pens like some people do with iPads, which I never have around, I'm always using my grubbies. So, yeah, maybe, I don't know. The other thing about the Rigol is you plug in a DC power, which is nice because it makes it isolated. So these aren't connected to your safety ground, your chassis ground. But they end up sending you this green wire so that you can plug it in the back of your scope and tie it to chassis, because you don't want to make these things live if you're testing something with high voltage, right? So, I mean, with 120 volts. That's not really high voltage, but, it's high enough. So they give you that green cable. When have you ever got one of those with your scope? So the other thing is you end up with a brick. The scope is narrow, right? But you end up with the brick that you have. Kind of like my Mix-Sig. Now the Mix-Sig, it's meant to be a portable scope, and anyway, it's not a big thing. It's just something to think about. But if you're talking about saving bench space, like I put my brick down there and run a cord all the way over here, it is a little bit of a pain because I have to run that cord. And anyway, it's just something to think about. But it could be something you like, and might be something you don't want. So something to consider. Now, I've seen people put them on those Visa stands, and I think that's kind of absurd. I mean, you guys might like that, but yeah. It's funny because when they show moving the scope around, it never has any leads on it, right? Well, a scope's not much good without leads on it. So once you put leads on it, you're dragging that around. You got your scope probes dragging out all over the place. Yeah. And then also the stand that those Visa stands take on your bench, and the, to be able to move the arm around, you need a certain amount of space. So it looks like you're saving space, but you're not, because you have this wielding arm around that's doing this. So you have to make sure you don't put stuff in front of that arm, or it's going to hit it, knock it over. So, and the space on the bench, at least the one review I saw, there's enough space to put the scope in that space. So I don't know. I think the Visa stands are great to put monitors on. If you want to put a big monitor up here and you're looking at your scope and you want to, use a big monitor to show other people in the room that everybody wants to see what you're looking at. I don't know. Everybody's use case is different, right? So that's just my feeling on it. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. 2 thumbs up to Uni-T for sending me out this scope. Really appreciate it. And I just thought, when I was going to show this, I thought, in my 1-minute video box opening, I had a few people talk about the new Rigo 12-bit scope. I thought, yeah, I love the idea of higher bit scopes. I really want to see Uni-T do it, and I really like to see it in maybe even a bigger screen too. So, and I think they're going to work on that. Maybe it's going to be next year, I don't know. But anyway, right now, looking at this scope, and then that Signet I have back there, the price of this thing is pretty darn good. It's 4 channels. And now here's a big thing I want to show you guys. In the full review, I'm going to show you some features that I think that surpasses what the Rigo scope does. For instance, FFT. The FFT on this thing, I haven't seen any other scope in near this price range or double this price range that has an FFT that is nice as this one. Okay, so I'm going to show you that. And FFTs are kind of a pain for a lot of people, like on the Signet, to use. I've shown techs and other engineers how to use that, and it's just kind of a pain unless you really want to use FFT. It's not easy to learn on because it's such a pain to set up. So I'm going to show you the one on this guy, and I think you'll be impressed. The GWS tech is really easy, the way it sets up, and I think the McSig is easy to use too. But this guy here, it has some features on it that I think you're going to be impressed by. Okay, the unit, some of them the GWN tech has, but that scope up there costs a lot more. Okay, so yeah, stay tuned for the full review of this guy, and I think it'll be worth watching, because if you haven't, if what I've told you already doesn't make you kind of think like, hey, maybe this guy is worth looking at versus that, because if I haven't mentioned it, the price, this is on sale right now. It's $100 off, I think, 100 something like that. So it's right around the same price as a Rigo, right around $550. Okay, so that's why I thought that 814 was a good one to compare it to. But really, the deep memory and the deep memory, you have to go to the DHO814 for that. Okay. And then on the DHO814, you might say, yeah, but you can get a generator with that. Yeah, but that's another $120 more. So you're up to $899. And then you might say, oh, yeah, but you get a logic analyzer too. Well, that's true, but that's $399 for the logic analyzer probe kit. So you got to be aware of those, the probe kits for those logic analyzers. Some scopes, they cost barely, like with the Pico, they come with the scope. Anyway, so you have to be aware of that. Okay, so that's all I'm saying about that. But all right, guys, hope you like this. Again, 2 thumbs up to Uni-T for sending this out to me. Appreciate it. And I really want to see some of their higher end scopes, because this is more of their entry levels. Now, another thing I should mention with the Uni-T is you can get a 4-channel scope, and the price on those, God, I want to say they're right around, I think there's one right under $300, and I think that's a 100 meg scope. It's just over $300 for the 200 meg scope, if I'm right. But anyway, so the price on these things is really good, okay? And this is also called their ultra phosphor, okay? They call it like a 3D thing. So I'm going to show you what that looks like too, and some of those other features inside the scope that I think compared to your Rigo, you might go, wow, okay, that 12-bit sounds sexy, but maybe just a really great 8-bit scope is the way to go. So there you go, guys. Hope you like it. Hey, if you're not a subscriber, I appreciate if you subscribe. 3 out of 4 people are not subscribers, so come on, guys, subscribe. 2 thumbs up to my patrons as well, and 2 thumbs up to the members of the channel, guys. Really appreciate you guys, and the team member Danny. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. And yeah, I think that'll cover it for today. We'll see you next time, and we'll do a full review on this, okay? Let me know what kind of tests you guys might want to see on this for that review, okay? Leave me your comments below. If you have the Rigo, let me know what you think, and thanks for watching.